قل هذه سبيلي أدعو إلى الله على بصيرة أنا ومن اتبعني وسبحان الله وما أنا من المشركين.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، صلى الله وسلم وبارك على المبعوث رحمة للعالمين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. أما بعد, dear brothers and sisters in Islam, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to our Saturday night episode of Ask Zad, coming to you every Saturday between Maghrib and Isha, Mecca time. As usual, we will take 3 questions from the emails and then we will take your direct calls. Abid says, what are the etiquettes of visiting the graveyard? The Prophet ﷺ recommended the Muslims to visit graveyards and said, in the past, I prohibited you from visiting the graveyards. As of today, go and visit it because it reminds you of the hereafter. So it is highly recommended for men to visit graveyards and not for women, because there is a prohibition and a curse upon the women when they visit graveyards. And the etiquettes to visit graveyards start with the intention. Why are you visiting the graveyard? If it is to make dua for yourself, and this is a blessed place, you want to ask Allah for things, this is prohibited. You visit the grave for 2 reasons. 1, to remind you of your fate and what you will share with them in a few days, few months, few years' time. So this is a good reminder. Secondly, to benefit the deceased with your dua, with your prayers. So the intention comes first, then the dua, which the Prophet ﷺ used to supplicate and say, Assalamu alaikum dara qawmi mu'mineen, peace be upon you, O place of believers. You are the first to precede us and we will follow, etc. You will find that in Husn al-Muslim, the Fortress of the Muslim. There are many du'as. And one has to be respectful in the sense that one must not walk over the graves themselves unless he's barefooted. So if you had to walk on the graves, you have to take your shoes off. Otherwise, there are pathways, there are places specific for people to walk over that are not over any grave. It is prohibited to sit on graves. It is prohibited to pray in the graveyard, the offer salat. The only prayer that is allowed is to pray funeral prayer for those who had missed it. And it is prohibited to give your back to the qibla and face the grave when making dua. Rather, you should face the qibla when making dua for the deceased. And if you make the grave between you and the qibla, so you would be facing both, that would be acceptable, insha'Allah azza wa jal. Nasha says, what is meant by double-faced people according to Islam? Because I have different personalities for different people, because I have an introvert and shy personality myself. Is this considered being double-faced? The Prophet ﷺ said in Al-Bukhari and Muslim that you will find the worst of people those who have 2 faces. And the hadith is authentic by all means. But what is meant by it? Scholars say that meeting people nicely and politely and being discreet with them has nothing to do with the two faces. The man with the two faces is a full-fledged hypocrite. So he goes to this party of people, acting to be on their side, trying to help them, while acquiring information from them and plotting to harm them. Then he goes to the other side of the people who may have enmity or issues with the first party, and he also collects information and he conveys some of the first party's secrets so that he plays on both sides. So each one thinks that he's on their side while he's trying to corrupt the relationships between them and cause harm. This is a full-fledged hypocrite, and this is the worst of all people. Being a good guy, being a nice person, when I meet someone who's evil and I treat him nicely, this doesn't make me a two-faced person. I'm not supposed to fight with this person or have any disagreement or argument with him just because I don't like him. This has nothing to do with being two-faced. And there is a hadith in Sahih al-Bukhari and elsewhere where a man, while the Prophet was sitting with his companions, sought permission to come in. So when the Prophet ﷺ was informed about the identity of the man, he said to those sitting with him, he is one of the worst of his clan. So that was a clear warning to the attendees of how evil this person is. However, when he came in, the Prophet smiled in his face, talked to him well, made him sit next to him until the man left. So Mother Aisha questioned what the Prophet said earlier and what he had done. So the Prophet said, alayhi salatu wasalam, the worst of people is a man whom others are protective, fearing his evil. And the Prophet told Aisha that, since when did you find me to be using offensive words or obscenity? The scholars explain, the Prophet ﷺ did not do anything against what Islam dictates. On the contrary, being who he was afraid that if he were to meet the man and smile in his face and act normally with him, the congregation, those with him in the gathering, would think that this is a man of righteousness, a man of knowledge, a man of to be a dignitary, to be respected. The Prophet wanted them to know that he is an evil person. But because of the pure, simple, and beautiful character of the Prophet ﷺ, he wanted to give them a heads up and a warning. That's why he told them about him, but treated him in a nice and polite way, and Allah Azza wa Jal knows best. Junaid says, is it permissible to create your own player, like cartoon form avatar, while playing video games? Well, this depends. If you are creating a character and you're putting the face, the eyes, and etc., this is haram, this is drawing. But if it is a selection of different characters and you choose one, this is permissible, insha'Allah Azza wa Jal. We have Muhammad from Pakistan.
Assalamu alaikum, sir.
Salamtullah.
Sir, I have a question that you call to himself Ahle Sunnat or Ahle Hadith. Where from you get this label? Because Prophet and their companions never ever called to himself Ahle Hadith, Shia, Sunni. So why you call to himself Ahle Sunnah?
Okay, I will answer you, inshallah. Muhammad from the US.
Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh.
Salam wa rahmatullah.
Sheikh, I wanted to know, I'll mention two jobs. So, in a faster country like US or any other non-Muslim countries, are those jobs permissible for a Muslim man?
I cannot
One of them
understand,
is,
Muhammad, I cannot understand a word except that you were offered a job.
Yeah, actually, I wanted to know, I'll mention two kind of job. Is any of the job is permissible for a Muslim man to do in a non-Muslim country? One of them is airline reservation ticket officer, who will be working with reserving the tickets, basically customer service, and maybe sometimes he'll be accepting money for the customer to book the ticket. And on the other hand, law enforcement, kind of a law enforcement officer who will be basically working working as an immigration officer, will be dealing with people coming and going in, coming in and going out of the border.
Okay, I will try to answer your question, inshallah. Insrem from Australia. Oh, so we have Abdul Aziz from Sri Lanka. Sorry.
Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh.
Salamtullah.
Sheikh, my question is, Sheikh, I came across a video of yours in which you said we cannot blame everything in jinn possession and evil eye. But still, Sheikh, if we ask, suppose we say if we are affected by jinn possession or evil eye or black magic, how could we know that we are affected, Sheikh? So that if we are affected, we can start doing ruqya. So what is the way we can know we are affected by it?
Okay, I will answer you, inshallah. So we have Insrem from Australia.
Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh.
Salamtullah.
I was wondering, for those the various du'as and stuff that are to be said when entering and when leaving places,
There's so much wind disturbance, Insram. I cannot hear you.
I think it's someone else's microphone. When you're entering, like the toilet, for example, or leaving home, and you want to say the dua before entering, should you stop at the door and say it, or can you say it as you're entering?
طيب, I will answer, inshallah. We have Farzana from Australia. Farzana. Farzana from Australia. Okay. Kamil from Saudi Arabia.
Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh.
Salamtullah.
Sheikh, my friend made an unrealistic vow. Now he is realizing when he made such vow, he was ignorant. Can he expiate that, and is sinful now?
What is the vow he said? What are the words exactly?
Something, something not relevant. Something he want to give away his own house. Something unrealistic.
For what? I cannot
For
answer.
charity. For charity.
Okay, so if he vows a charity to Allah Azza wa Jal, on what basis?
He vow, because that time he was having difficulty to get married.
So
Now
what is exactly, let him call me, Akhi. Let him call me and I will try to answer him, inshallah. We have Fras from Tunisia.
Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh.
Salamtullah.
How are you, Sheikh?
Alhamdulillah, hayyak Allah, Akhi.
Jazakallah khair, Sheikh. Sheikh, I learned that some scholars say that praying in haram clothes makes the prayer invalid. So my question is, does praying in clothes that harm you invalidate the prayer?
Okay.
Like tight clothes, or very, very tight that they harm you, or wet clothes that might make you sick, something like that?
Okay, I will answer, inshallah. And we have Muhammad from Bangladesh.
Assalamu alaikum, Shaykh.
Salamtullah.
How are you?
Alhamdulillah.
Shaykh, I have a question that I have a jacket which has a color red and maroon, but not deeply red. How can I wear this jacket?
I don't know what is happening with the sound, that there's so much distortion. Is it the microphone of the callers? Is it possible that all the callers having the same problem? Or is there someone coming in the call? I have no idea. I will answer you, inshallah. And we have Muhammad from the Philippines. Muhammad from the Philippines. Okay, Tani from the US.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Sheikh.
Assalamu
I have a
alaikum.
question.
Yes.
In USA, we usually get together once a week, few ladies, and who doesn't have any Islamic knowledge, but we do some sort of Islamic discussion or halakha. We read from the books and discuss. Is it permissible? Because one of our imams said if there is no knowledgeable person present, we are not supposed to conduct that kind of halakha.
Okay.
And is there any restriction, please?
I will answer, inshallah. Latifa from the US. وجزاكم. Latifa from the US.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
So I know we are allowed to make dua in sujood in our home language, but what about in tashahhud after we finish saying salutation of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and then we seek refuge in Allah from the four things? And can we make dua in our home language in tashahhud?
Okay. I will answer, inshallah. And we have Arik from the US.
Assalamu alaikum, Shaykh.
Assalamu wa barakatuh.
Sheikh, there is a hadith said once when Abu Bakr reached in mosque, he find out that the prayer has already begun. So what he did, he went straight to the ruku' before he reached the congregation. And after raising his head, he walked and joined the congregation. If we do this, like Abu Bakr did, will our prayer be valid? Or
Abu Bakr did not do anything like this, akhi. It is Abu Bakrah. It's a different person. But I will answer you, inshallah. Salihin from Canada.
Assalamu alaikum, Shaykh.
Salatullah.
Sheikh, my question is, what is the difference between aqidah and manhaj, and what is the manhaj of the salaf? Jazakallah khair.
Wajazakum. So, I think we have, that's it. Yeah, I think that's about it. So, Muhammad from Pakistan says, you always say that we are from Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah or Ahl al-Hadith. Where did this come from? At the time of the Prophet ﷺ, they were all Muslims. True. Then what happened afterwards? They remained to be Muslims until what is known as a Shia came to existence. And they started dividing the Ummah. And after a while, or actually before the Shia, Al-Khawarij came at the time of the Prophet ﷺ. So we have Al-Khawarij. Then we have the Rafida, Shia. Then we have Al-Murji'ah. Then we have Al-Jahmiyyah, and those sects that came out of them, such as Al-Mu'tazila, and the sects that came out of them, such as Al-Asha'ir, etc., who are sharing some of the principles, but in general, there were so many of them. So, basically speaking, when someone asks you, what are you? You say, I'm a Muslim. وَمَنْ أَحْسَنُ قَوْلًا مِمَّنْ دعا إلى الله وعمل صالحا وقال إنني من المسلمين. There's no one better in rhetoric than a person who calls to Allah, does righteous deeds, and proclaims that I'm among the Muslims. However, nowadays, if you say I'm a Muslim, people would go a bit further, said, what kind of a Muslim? And you would say, I'm not a Rafidi, I'm a Sunni. So they say, okay, the Rafida is like 8%, but 92% of the Sunnah have deviant sects and cults in them. So what kind of them? So you have to start explaining yourself. And the scholars say that the hadiths of the Prophet عليكم بسنتي وسنة الخلفاء الراشدين المهديين من بعدي. Abide by my sunnah, by my way, and by the sunnah and the way of the righteously guided caliphs. So this is why we call ourselves Ahlus Sunnah. And also we call ourselves Wal Jama'ah because the Prophet ﷺ told us that Allah's hand is with the Jama'ah. and whoever goes astray would go to hellfire. So the scholars selected this terminology, this name, Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah, that has no sect, that has no cult that it attributes itself to. Rather, anyone who says Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah by default has to go back to the Sunnah, which is the Hadith, which is the guideline that he walks and abides by, and the Jama'ah of the Muslims. So he abides by the Muslim ruler, whom Allah Azza wa Jal and His Messenger ﷺ ordered us to obey, the Muslim ruler, even if he was sinful. So this is where it came from. And nowadays, ignorant people may come and say, this was not at the time of the Prophet ﷺ. True. Also, printing the Quran was not at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, but it is a necessity, and it was needed. Having masjids with carpets and air conditioning and lights and microphones and speakers was not at the time of the Prophet ﷺ. But again, so it is not for laymen to come and just simply scratch off things they don't understand or they cannot comprehend. Rather, it is for the scholars of the deen. And it's like someone coming and asking, how is it this neurosurgeon is doing this procedure to remove something from the spinal cord and to do this? Akhi, who are you? What did you study? I did biology in primary school. Subhanallah. Now you're questioning this. So again, we have to be really careful when we question things about religion, and when we try to find justifications, ask. This is totally permissible, but not object. And there's a big difference, and Allah knows best. Muhammad from the US, I couldn't understand what he was saying. And this is why callers should be very careful when they speak, to speak slowly, so that the people could understand what they're saying and in a clear accent as much as possible. What I understood was his question was about the permissibility in working in interest-based banks in a non-Muslim country, in airlines, as a ticket officer, issuing tickets to people that we may use it and travel with it, immigration officer, etc. Akhi, most of the jobs you can say it's halal or haram according to the job description. Someone who's working in an interest conventional bank, interest-based conventional bank, riba-based. So the whole institute, the whole firm, the whole corporation is based on riba, by borrowing and lending. So this is totally prohibited, even if you're working as a driver or a janitor or a security officer, because you're protecting the whole haram firm, and this is prohibited. Selling tickets, what's the ruling on traveling? I'm traveling in a couple of days, inshallah. So what's the ruling on my traveling? Depends. Am I traveling for something that's halal or haram? As a ticket salesman or a ticket officer, you don't know. Nobody's going to come to you and say, listen, I need a ticket to this country because I'm going to party and hang out and with women and drink intoxicants and do every evil thing. Nobody does this. I just need a ticket. It's not my job to say where, what are you going to do with it. So such a job is totally halal. You're selling tickets, you're selling water, whether they're going to add it to their whiskey or to drink it or wash their hands with it, it's none of your business. And working as an immigration officer, every single country has this job. You have your rules and regulations set by the government, whether a Muslim or a Kafir government, that filters those who come in. So if they don't have a visa, turn them back. If they have a visa but they have something prohibited to enter, you have to block it and you have to take the following procedures. There's nothing wrong in that, and Allah knows best. Abdul Aziz from Sri Lanka says, You say that not everything we can blame on jinn. That's true. So how do we know if someone is afflicted by jinn, magic, evil eye, or envy? Well, this is something that the experts in ruqya could tell you. I'm not an expert in it, but I can tell you that if someone feels awkward, if someone feels that he did something but he didn't actually do it, and people are coming to him and says, "What's wrong with your head? You should have done so and so." And he said, "I did it." He said, "No, you did not." Then this is something to raise a flag. If someone, whenever he reads the Quran, he yawns and falls asleep. If someone all of a sudden goes into seizures and sometimes speaks different languages, then these are question marks. But not every failure in our life is attributed to this. So if I have a flat tire, this is envy. If my kid fails at school, this is evil eye. If my wife nags me, she's possessed by jinn. If I don't get a raise or a better position or job, then this is black magic, etc. No, this is not true. There are no signs, but it is indeed an easy way out for most of us. This is why we try to cling to it and justify our failures and mistakes, and Allah Azza wa Jal knows best. We have a short break. Stay tuned, and inshallah, we'll be right back.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Today I'm going to talk about the book Interactions of the Greatest Leader. Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam reminded us through his guidance and example that Islam is complete submission to the will of Allah. For one who submits, a mere declaration or display of belief will not be taken for success, but his or her heart and soul will certainly be put to test. Allah tested the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam severely in order that he sallallahu alaihi wasallam becomes an example for his companions to follow. Similarly, he tests the believer to see whether he lives a righteous life in accordance with the instructions and commands set by Allah, or lives according to what his desires dictate. Whether the faith he displays is firmly rooted in his heart, or is it merely on the surface. He will be tested to see whether he will continue to have faith and love of Allah when in a calamity, as he does when in comfort, whether he will continue to remember and worship him if given bounties and comforts of life, as he does when he lives a modest life. Allah will undoubtedly test him to see if his faith, trust and love of him is unconditional, or is it conditioned upon good health and a comfortable life, free from stress and anxiety. The Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam showed us through his own example that for a righteous Muslim, this life is a testing ground where he will continue to be tested until he meets Allah. For him, tests will be conducted on earth while he lives, and not after he dies. He knows that as soon as death arrives and he steps into the next world, his tests are over. There, he only receives the result of his tests and enjoys the fruits of the deeds that he committed during a short span of time called life.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, and welcome back. We have Abdul Razak from Ghana. Abdul Razak from Ghana. Okay. Then Abdullah from Pakistan. Abdullah from Pakistan. I think we will take the previously answered question until we get the callers, inshallah, organized. Fras from Tunis says, not Fras, Intram from Australia. She says, or he says, wallah, I forgot. What is the ruling on saying the dua, Bismillah, a'udhu billahi min al-khubthi wal-khaba'ith? Should I say it while entering or before entering? You should not say it inside. So as you're entering, if you're not inside, then you can say it. If you say it outside, this is best, and it's best to be safe rather than sorry. Fras from Tunisia, he says, now I've come across some of the scholars saying that praying in stolen clothes is haram and the prayer is invalid. This is some of the schools of thought's opinion, that the awrah is covered by something that is not halal. So it is as if you're not covered and the prayer is invalid. And this is not true. The most authentic opinion is that the prayer is valid, but a person is sinful for what he stole. So wearing wet clothes that may make you sick, or clothes that may harm you, would that invalidate the prayer? Again, this has no impact on the validity of the prayer. It's a separate sin. Muhammad from Bangladesh, he says, if I wear a jacket that it is not pure red, rather it is maroon or burgundy. So if it is not red, due to the difference of opinion, this is permissible, inshallah, especially when we know that maroon or burgundy is closer to being brown rather than pure red, and inshallah this is permissible. Tani from the US says, we're a bunch of women who meet once a week to study verses of the Quran, books of knowledge, etc. Some of the scholars say that this is not permissible because we don't have knowledge and hence this is dangerous. No, this is totally bogus. You're not giving fatwas. You're not reinventing the wheel. Rather, you're reading a verse of the Quran and the tafsir of it, or a hadith and the explanation of scholars. So you're not shooting from the hip. You're not doing something from your own whims and desires. Rather, you're reading what the scholar said. This is totally permissible and without any problem, insha'Allah azza wa jal. Adnan from Qatar.
Assalamu alaikum.
Salamullah.
My name is Adnan. I'm calling from Qatar. Sheikh, I have one question.
Yes, sir.
I just need to know about it. That let's say if I'm getting a benefit from my company as an insurance, like medical insurance, and I am not paying any penny from my side, it's a cover from my company. Is that permissible to use it for my kids and for myself? Similarly, we have.
I will answer, inshallah. Salman from Saudi.
Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh.
Salamullah.
What is the ruling about the Kaaba in Iran, the replicated?
What is the ruling on?
The replicated Kaaba in Iran.
I don't understand your question.
The ruling
on
the replicated Kaaba.
What is the ruling on Kaaba? What Kaaba?
A replicated one in
A
Iran.
replicate, okay. Okay, I will answer inshallah. And we have Farzana from Australia.
Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh.
Salamullah.
Is your istikhara still accepted if you haven't memorized the dua at the end and you need to read it from your phone or something instead?
Okay, I will answer inshallah.
Jazakallah.
Wa jazakum. CD from Germany.
Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh.
Salamullah.
Sheikh, if a family lives in a non-Muslim country And there, the children are forced to go to the public school and forced to do their evil acts like playing music instrument, going to swimming pool, in a mixed swimming pool, and learning things that are haram, for example, about zina, homosexuality, and so on. And there's no other alternative, for example, to go to Islamic private school. And so, does this come under the category that someone cannot able to practice his religion because he's forced to do evil acts and not able to do the obligation like going to Jumu'ah prayer, if that? So, and if so, are the parents obliged to go to a Muslim country if they are able to do things that are not haram?
Okay, I will answer inshallah. Muhammad from India. Muhammad? Okay, Sami from the US.
Assalamu alaikum wa barakatuh, Sheikh.
Assalamu alaikum wa barakatuh.
How are you, Sheikh?
I'm doing well. What's on your mind?
So the question I'm about to ask, you previously answered it, but I have a couple of issues with it, and it's regarding selling something that you don't possess. Can I ask that question, please?
Please.
So, for example, let's say I take a platform called Amazon, and I post a product on it, and customer sees it, buys it, and as soon as I get the money, I go out to, for example, Alibaba, AliExpress, and I buy it cheaper, and I keep it from there. So, will this be permissible? And also, I was told recently that you have to have an agreement or like a verbal agreement, contract with merchants, so that they know you're profiting off of their item. Jazakumullah khair.
Wa jazak. Rashad from Tunisia.
Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh.
Salamullah.
I asked you a question via email, but you answered with 2 words. Can I ask it again? Can you elaborate?
I don't know. Let us see.
Okay. Sheikh said that unlike the Salafis who are only following the Quran and the Sunnah,
what?
Sheikh said that unlike the Salafis who are only following the Quran and the Sunnah, making everything hard on people, we should follow 4 things: Quran, Sunnah, Ijma' and Qiyas. Is this true? And what is al-Qiyas? Jazakallah khair.
Okay. And we have Halima from France. Halima? Halima from France.
Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
Yeah. I would like to have more details on how to drink Zamzam water for duha. Should we face the Qibla, drink it 3 times at a time or 3 times in 3 days with small cup, and can we spray little on our face for protection in any moment?
Okay. I will answer inshallah. So going back to the questions, Latifa from the US, she says, can we make dua after tashahhud and before concluding the prayer with salam in my own language? The answer is yes. If you can make it in sujood, you can make it before salam, providing you don't know how to say it in Arabic. So if I want to say, oh Allah, pay off my debts, but I don't know how to say it in Arabic. I don't know how to say, Allahumma qdi anni dayni. So I would say it in my own language. But if I know how to say, oh Allah, forgive my sins, I can't say, oh Allah, forgive my sins. I have to say, Rabbi ghfirli, because I know how to say it in Arabic. Arik says that he heard or read a hadith about Abu Bakr prostrating at the gate or the doors of the masjid when the Prophet and the congregation bowed, did ruku'. So from the gate or the door, he made ruku' and he walked while in ruku' until he was in the line. He says, can we do this? The answer is no. First of all, this man was not Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, the first caliph. Rather, he was Abu Bakrata al-Thaqafi. And this one man was nicknamed by Bakra, which is a rail, because when Taif city was besieged by the Prophet ﷺ for 20 or so days, the Prophet ordered the Sahaba to say that whomever comes to us from the slaves accepting Islam, we will set him free. So he came down with a rope from a rail and accepted Islam, and he was set free, and he was known as Abu Bakr. In the hadith in al-Bukhari and elsewhere, when he came to the masjid and the Prophet bowed, went into ruku', he could not stand straight, seeing the Prophet ﷺ and the companions in the position of ruku'. So he said, Allahu Akbar, and made ruku' and walked all the way while in the position of ruku', which is very awkward, and until he was with the row of the worshippers. When the Prophet concluded his prayer, he said, who did that? Allah informed him, and we know that the Prophet could see those who are behind him, which is a miracle given to him by Allah Azza wa Jal in Salat. So Abu Bakr said, I did that, O Prophet of Allah. The Prophet said, alayhi salam, زادك الله حرصا ولا تعد, which means may Allah increase you in being keen and careful to worship Allah and to get closer to Allah. Do not go back to that. Meaning, don't ever do this again. And this is why we never do this, because the Prophet prohibited him from repeating it, alayhi salatu wasalam, and the prohibition is cascaded down to us, so we cannot do this. We have to walk until we are standing in the row and then make takbir and do our ruku'. Salihin from Canada, he says, what's the difference between aqidah and manhaj? Linguistically, it's the same. And nowhere, to my knowledge, that is reliable, that mentioned the difference between aqidah and manhaj, except in the past 30 years or so. And this came up when the division started between the Salafis. So there were so many, parties, if you wish, and each one claiming to be on the right path. So the issue of manhaj came up because they found that, okay, we all have the same aqidah. We all studying al-Wasitiyya, Kitab al-Tawheed, al-Tahawiyya, etc. We have the same aqidah. We have the same belief in Allah's beautiful names and attributes, in the pillars of Iman, blah, blah, blah. Everything that deals with aqidah and our conviction, we share the same thing, same books, same references. We have no issues. But there might be some issues in things that we may not agree upon. So they came up with, they are on the right aqidah, but they have a corrupt manhaj. And this is what made some people say that aqidah deals with things of belief, while manhaj deals with actions and forms of worship. So what is your methodology, your manhaj in references? So we, as the questioner in somewhere, where is he? I don't know. He was somewhere here. I'll try to find it later on, inshallah. The questioner was asking about Rashad. Rashad, he says that one of the scholars say that the Salafis divide the ummah and we should only rely on Quran, Sunnah, Ijma' and Qiyas. This is true, but the statement in the beginning is totally false. No Salafi would say we have only Quran and Sunnah. Without Ijma', he's not a Muslim, because he chose other than the path of the believers. And Allah mentioned that he will be going to hell, whoever chooses other than the way of the Prophet ﷺ and the believers. And without qiyas, it's illogical. The Quran and the Sunnah is filled with analogy, qiyas, where you compare things to others and you know whether it's haram or halal. Drugs are not mentioned in the Quran or in the Sunnah, but it is intoxicating, so it is compared to wine that is mentioned in the Quran and the Sunnah, etc. So as a manhaj, yes, what is your point of reference? Quran, Sunnah, with the understanding of the three favorite generations, while applying ijma' and qiyas as well. What is your manhaj? Well, depends. some people have a different manhaj when it comes to the Muslim rulers. So some say, no, we have to oppose the Muslim rulers. We have to stand against them. This is a treat of Khawarij. Some say we have to do whatever they say, even if it's wrong, even if it's haram, even if it's legislating something that against the Sunnah. This is the methodology of al-Murji'ah. So you have to define what is your manhaj, and such a definition has to be in accordance to the Aqeedah itself. It's not a separate thing. It's all come to the same thing, and Allah Azza wa Jalla knows best. Adnan from Qatar says, my company offers me an insurance, medical insurance policy. It comes with the package. I don't pay a penny. So can I avail it for me and my wife and my children? There's no problem at all. You can use it 100%. Salman from Saudi Arabia, he says, what is the ruling on making a replica of the Kaaba? This is something that the scholars have talked about and said that this is totally prohibited, especially when people are trying to teach others how to perform tawaf and umrah for Hajj. So it's a training. Some countries, Muslim countries, may build a replica, or in some schools in the season of Hajj, to teach their students and the Muslims how the Kaaba is, where is the black stone, where you should start the tawaf, what is Maqam Ibrahim, and this is totally prohibited. Now, if someone is doing this, as in the case of so-called Muslim countries like Iran, and they want to distract people from coming to Mecca, this is total blasphemy. This is not Islam. These people are disbelievers because they are replicating one of Allah's great shrines and distracting the Muslims from coming to Mecca, performing tawaf, performing Hajj, performing Umrah, to stay where they are and think that this is even similar or even rewardable. And it's even worse when they do that to the grave of their disbelieving rulers like La'natullah al-Khomeini and others. This is totally out of the question and blasphemy. Fazana from Australia, she says, is the istikhara still valid when I don't memorize the dua, but I read it from a book? The answer is 100%. It is still valid. Not everybody can memorize the dua, especially non-Arabs. So if you pray the 2 rak'ahs, you finish, and you open the booklet and you read the dua, this is totally legit. CD from Germany, he says, children in a non-Muslim country, they're forced to go to schools. And we know how they are fighting virtue and righteousness, not Islam only. We know the vicious attack against morality in Europe and in the US and in Canada and elsewhere. This is so vicious. They are systematically inserting and brainwashing people to be part of the homosexuality environment, justifying, legitimizing LGBTQ, XYZ. And this is against the principles of democracy. I don't like that. Why do you force me to do it or to take it or to embrace it? Where's the democracy? Where's the freedom of speech? The First Amendment? Where is this? Where is that? All down the drain. Because the system wants to manipulate you, to brainwash you. So, Brother Sidi says, they force our children to go to such schools. And in 4th or 5th grade and onwards, boys and girls have joint physical education classes. They go to the swimming pool together. They play sports together. They have to wear the clothes in the same fashion. And my children are Muslims. All of this is totally haram in our religion. Well, this is the system. They force them to take music classes, maybe do ballet, dancing, maybe learn haram things from an early age, how to have protective sex. They talk about condoms, they can't talk about dildos, they talk about the whole 9 yards. A'udhu billah. So, what is the responsibility of parents? Usually, this is unaccepted. And you as a Muslim parent must take your children out of such schools. Do homeschooling. It's a democratic country. You have the right to teach your children whatever you want. Who imposes upon you what to eat and what not to eat? What to read and what not to read? This is not the big brother society. You should have rights at least. If this is not possible, in this case, it is a must for you to migrate to a Muslim country, which is a priority, or to a non-Muslim country that allows you to practice Islam freely. But to remain in the country you're in with such oppression, though they don't call it oppression, they camouflage it, they put a mask on it. So they fight niqab, they fight hijab, they fight anything that indicates your Islamic identity. They want the Muslims to lose their identity and to oppress them until they give up their beliefs and religion. But this is not oppression. No. This is re-educating them, trying to put them in a melting pot so that the whole society is blending. All of this is nonsense. A lot of BS, and totally the Muslims must put an end to it. Akhi, don't stay in such a country. If you can, relocate to a Muslim country. If not, then relocate to a non-Muslim country that allows you to worship Allah and to upbring your children in an Islamic way. Sami says, selling what you don't possess. Akhi, this is the Prophet's words, alayhi salam. Do not sell what you do not possess. So the scholars looked into it and said, anything that you sell which you do not have access to or you do not guarantee. So if I sell you this cup and you buy it, by the time I take it to you, if it breaks, I am in charge. I'm liable to pay for it. I don't have the right to say, you bought it. No, but I didn't deliver it. If it's in my stores and I sold it to you, or before selling it to you, the stores were burnt to the ground, I'm liable to pay for it. So there is the issue of risk of losing and gaining when I sell with a profit. But if I don't have such a risk and I guarantee the profit, this is what is prohibited, to sell something that you don't have. Like selling you a fish in a pond. Go ahead and fish it. Maybe you'll catch it, maybe you won't. Maybe it dies, maybe it does this. I don't know. I just sold it to you. This bird in the sky, you shoot it down if you can. Maybe you miss, not my problem. No, I cannot sell you what I do not possess. So the only way out is to use bay'u salam. And this is, one, to know a particular item that is fully described without any ambiguity. Two, to collect the full amount of the price up front before I deliver to them. Three, I give a specific date of delivery, not 2022, inshallah. No, I have to give a month and a week, preferably a date. If this is done, then yes, I can. If I take partial payment, this is haram. I have to take the full payment in advance, and the description has to be totally clear. Rashad, I think we've answered his question. Halima from France, what is the etiquette of drinking Zamzam? There isn't any such etiquette. Just say Bismillah and make dua. Some scholars say you face the Qibla. Some scholars say you drink in 3 sips, which is normal in all types of drink, even in coffee or whatever, when you want to, and if it's suitable to be consumed in 3 sips. But there isn't any specific thing. So usually what I do is I get the water of Zamzam and I make dua, praising Allah, offering salutation upon the Prophet ﷺ, oh Allah, give me more knowledge, and I drink. 3 times, 5 times, 10 times, 2 glasses, 5 glasses. Do I have to do it over a period of time? No. If you want to do it, I personally drink Zamzam 24, 7 days a week. Nothing but Zamzam, alhamdulillah, because we have it available here and we buy tons of it and we drink all the time from Zamzam. So we do ruqya on it, we drink it all day long, and we make dua when we drink it. But is there any specific etiquette? No, there is no such thing, and Allah Azza wa Jal knows best. This is all the time we have until I meet with you tomorrow, Sunday, after Asr time in Mecca region. I leave you fi amanillah. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
قل هذه سبيلي أدعو إلى الله على بصيرة أنا ومن اتبعني وسبحان الله وما أنا من المشركين.